Hey everyone, William Strife here for Elements of Play, and to kick off the new season, I'm going to do this episode just a little bit differently. This time around, the subject is what the next big thing is going to be for next-gen consoles, or what will make the games look better, if you will. Before I get to that though, let me back up and cover a little bit of history about how games have improved between console generations in general. It may not be the first console ever, but the original Nintendo Entertainment System is a good enough place to start. The NES was the 8-bit console that re-established the home gaming market after the arcade crash in the early 1980s. What's important for this subject though isn't what the NES did, but what its successor, the SNES, did when launched in 1991. The big push for the Super Nintendo Entertainment System and its competitor, the Sega Genesis, was the major upgrade in graphics. They had a host of other upgrades including more buttons, pathing improvements, and faster processing, but the biggest thing they had was a larger color palette. Artists could paint the game sprites with more than double the number of colors that were available on the NES. Thus, the big push was the improvement of the art or graphical quality of the games. The next movement was the introduction of 3D graphics. Consoles like the Nintendo 64 and the original PlayStation were the leading platforms of this generation. A lot of other things were introduced along with 3D, but by far the movement away from two-dimensional sprites was the biggest and most influential change of this generation. The push in the next generation, represented by the Sega Dreamcast, the PlayStation 2, GameCube, and Xbox, was the number of polygons the consoles could render at once. This advancement is what defined the generation. Characters finally had distinguishable faces, and large open-world environments could be rendered, moving game design away from linear pathing and corridor level design. Now, the current generation was advertised for its ability to be rendered in HD, or high definition. The push for console superiority was how the games would not only look more real, but they would be able to render in a resolution high enough for you to see the details. There were also improvements like physics systems, large-scale multiplayer support, and the ability to render large crowds. While it's debatable which feature has actually been the most influential, high-definition visuals were undeniably the major selling point. Through each of these generations, a typical cycle has been constant. One set of consoles breaks ground, while the following generation hones in and makes major improvements. The Super Nintendo improved on the graphics and animations over the NES, and the PlayStation 2 generation made character models more detailed over the blocky geometry of the previous consoles. The current generation established HD visuals, and the upcoming next-generation consoles will build on and make use of the high resolution with one particular piece of technology: tessellation. To demonstrate to you exactly what tessellation is, I'll show you what all consoles will be doing tomorrow that expensive high-end PCs are doing today. Okay, this is the U-Engine Heaven DirectX 11 benchmark. Now, for those of you who don't know, a benchmark is literally a real-time game environment without interactivity. The sole purpose of a benchmark is to test a computer and its hardware. A stress test, if you will. How high can the visuals be turned up while the game still continues to run smoothly? Right now, it's running on DirectX 9 settings, which is very similar to the graphical complexity that the PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360 work at. Now, both consoles can indeed perform tessellation, but nothing like what you'll see in this video, and what this benchmark can do for that matter. Now, as you can see here, a lot of surfaces are just flat. They have no depth beyond the textures that cover them. This is how games have worked for a long time, and applying high-quality textures to any surface can make models look much more real. But they don't change the lack of three-dimensional depth. Like I've said, you've been watching this in primitive DX9 mode, so now let's fade over to DirectX 11 mode with tessellation enabled. Bam! The main reason why details like the geometric depth of brickwork seen here haven't been modeled before is how we haven't had the technology to crunch the number of polygons required to do so. Tessellation changes this, because it's literally the process of seamlessly ramping up detail of 3D models based on how close objects are to the camera. This is an enormous improvement over the current method, which relies on displaying low-quality models and then loading in high-quality ones just at the right time, often resulting in easily seen seams and pop-in. To make it clear what tessellation is doing, I'm going to switch over to wireframe so you can actually see what's happening to the 3D models. Now, this is what the wireframe looks like in DX9 mode. All of the basic polygons are there, but most of them are locked flat, making them easier to render. Now, in DX11, those polygons are given volume and depth. Moreover though, when the objects move closer to the camera, the number of polygons they have increase. This is tessellation, when one polygon progressively becomes 3 or 4 or however many more. This kind of detail in games has never really been possible before. In the past, the only ways to mimic this type of fidelity and its interaction with pixel shaders was through things like bump mapping, parallax shading, and normal maps. Though some of those techniques are still being used here, it's pretty clear that tessellation is what will set video games of the next console generation apart from what we have today. Honestly, the importance of this technology would be greatly dwarfed if it weren't for the HD rendering introduced by the current generation of consoles. Tessellation is literally the way higher pixel count is being put to better use, with increased model detail and visual fidelity. There's certainly more that can be said on this subject and the technology. However, since I've gotten the main point across, and in the interest of not stretching this out any further, I'll stop here. Until next time, I'm William Strife, and this has been a video blog from b10g.net, April 23rd, 2012. Strife out.